welcome to a Dander through my life. I'm David Scott and we're here in Pomeroy and we're going to have a chat with the Rev. Trevor Boyd and take him for a dander through his life. So Trevor Boyd, it's good to meet you again. It's good to be here in Pomeroy Presbyterian Church, and it's a vital part of your life and part of your story, because it's not that far from here where you were reared and raised. So can you tell me a wee bit about your family background and where you came from and what is the important link between home and Pomeroy Presbyterian Church?
Yep. Well, in the country, David, townlands are important. So our home was in the townland of Bardahesha, and we lived on the family farm. There was Mum and Dad, June and Tommy Boyd, and there were a family of 5 of us as children. I'm the eldest, so I had to work the hardest. Then my sister Elizabeth, Hazel, the gap in the family, and then along came Heather and Derek. So there were 5 of us, but because of the age spread, it's probably true to say, you know, the first 3 of us were closer, the gap, and then Heather and Derek are still young to us, you know. So that was our home. Daddy would have been a dairy farmer, typical for the time, milked about 30 cows, got into pigs and worked up to 70 sows. And then Pomeroy would have been our local village. So before there were telephones in your house, if you had to ring somebody, you'd have come to Pomeroy to use the phone box. And likewise, Pomeroy Presbyterian Church was our home church. So this is where we'd have come to worship. This would have been really part of the hub of our family life.
What can you tell me about growing up as a young boy on the farm?
Well, as you look back, people would probably say it was a simple way of life, but then equally it was simple for that whole generation, because we were doing the same things as our neighbours up or down the road. But it was certainly manual. One of the things to remember, you're saying about the farm, you know, the sheds were smaller, the doors were smaller, so it was easy carrying in the straw to make the cattle warm and dry, but then all that manure had to be forked out again, so it had to be gripped through the door. There was no mat bro or grab coming to take it out. So there's a lot of manual labour. And probably, truth be told, it was family, because, you know, you're always with Daddy and Mummy both worked on the farm. But as I discovered, particularly, you know, I was writing an article around the time my father died, or after my father died. I've discovered in life that the more you put into something, the more precious something becomes. And as you walk out through the farm, you can remember, oh, Dad and I built that, or he got me to plumb that drinker, or he said, look, that's your job. So you had those wee memories come back, and you feel that you've invested and you've learned something, and it's been passed on to me, and likewise you're trying to pass on something to the next generation.
And whilst the farm would have been a very practical manual role for your father or yourself or your uncles you talked about, but your mother would have played a vital role in the workings of the farm. I have no doubt about
that. She was an active lady. She liked doing the books, so she kept all the records, and she would have typically have signed the checks and dealt with that administration. And still at 85, 86, she could still she still is doing the same today.
And then going on to school, where were you schooled?
School was just around the corner here from the church in Pomeroy Primary School. Ken McGuinness was the principal, who then went on after his teaching days to become a lord. At that stage, there would have been around 70 children in Pomeroy Primary School, and then in the 70s a new primary school was built, which the children go to today.
And what's your memories of school like? Were you a scholar? Did you enjoy school?
No, no. I was just trying to get from one day to the next. I liked maths at school. in our P7 class, for example, I just remember that there were 6 of us. So it was small and homely, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. There were smarter ones than me, so I got through it.
And you transferred not just from the primary school here on to a neighbouring town, perhaps?
Yeah, no, that was one thing that Ken McGuinness was good with, or Mr. McGuinness. He had a high success rate with 11 plus at that stage. So, yep, I passed 11 plus, and then historically, with the location of Pomeroy, people would have went to Dungan Royal School or Drumglass Secondary School. But for us, we were in the Barda House, had been in the Cookstown side. The bus went past the end of our road, so we travelled into Cookstown High School.
You're now a Presbyterian minister. What or how did you make that journey to become a minister? Like, it's very appropriate we talk about that now, standing here in your home church.
It is, yeah.
And where did that journey commence, Trevor?
That journey commenced here. It commenced in a pew down below us. So through the Reverend Lindsay, who would have been our minister, really in the spring of 2008, he was preaching, and the sermons just seemed to be for me. I actually walked out of church on different mornings crying, not crying, but tears in how personal the message was. And I felt a strong sense that God was speaking. We talk about being called to ministry, but that's certainly how it seemed to me. Then that led to great discussion and great debate with my dear wife, Barbara. And she says, but how do you know, and how do you know you're not meant to go to Africa? So we had all these big discussions at the family home on a Sunday afternoon, and just different things all seemed to dovetail together. And in actual fact, one day I was going to an appointment with the vets in Fermanagh, and I just felt this great urge to pull in. And so I phoned my own minister and said, look, you might find this crazy, but I believe I'm being called to ministry. And we chatted for about 35 minutes, just like what we're doing today, and on the phone that was. And he tried to assure me and encourage me. So he was there to help me with the application process, which takes about a year again to help your discernment. So then I applied for ministry in September 2008 and was accepted and started to study in September 2009.
And the church itself here, like when you think about communities and that Ulster Scots connection, the congregation here in Pomeroy grew out of something else. Is that fair to say? The history of the congregation here.
I got sucked into, as part of understanding who am I and who we are as families and people and where do we come from. We got established Marie Community Association, and as part of that we got involved in Ulster Scots Network, and Ulster Scots Agency was on the go, and various projects. So we tried to dig in a wee bit to the history of our own family in terms of being Boyd. Ulster, we came to Ulster from Scotland. There's Boyd Castle in Kilmarnock, etc. As we explored that, we discovered that Moray, where the community group was based, was the site of an intended settlement for Scots Presbyterians. They got as far as erecting what's understood to be a stick and mud church, with some graves attached to it, but then that seemed to fizzle out. It seemed really historically to be a failed Ulster Scots settlement. But the church, or the congregation that was based at Moray, then divided. Some of the families went towards the village of Sandholes, and some of the families moved to worship then in the village of Pomeroy. So there was Sandholes Presbyterian Church and Pomeroy Presbyterian Church. So really the people of Moray went to whichever direction it was closest to them.
Trevor, now in the family homestead, and this is the family farm where you would have had cows being milked, and it's quite ironic, we're standing in the parlour where once the cows were being milked, and now we've got a byproduct of the milk industry now in a different generation. So diversification is very clearly visible here.
Where we're standing would be what was referred to as the old dairy. That was where the milk cans and all were kept. And next door would have been where the cows were. So we thought this was a way to bring new life with a new generation to the farm. So I don't really have any farmers coming after me. So this is the best we're going to be able to do, David.
So the Betty's Ice Cream, Bethany, your daughter,
Yes,
is the producer, no doubt.
Yeah, Bethany would be the most food farming orientated. So she studied at Loughrea for her food and business degree, and then graduated. But before she graduated in July 2021, we ended up establishing Betty's Ice Cream. The marketeers thought that Betty's had a better ring to it than Bethany, so it is named after Bethany. So there's a real person, because people often ask who is Betty. So Bethany's our daughter. During COVID, we had a whole discussion. The farm was being rented out, just wasn't working out. Bethany was thinking about her career, and we thought, well, we've got the assets, why not make a go at it and see what happens? So there's a bit of that Ulster Scots mentality. You want to make the best of what you got, and keep the family tradition alive. In farming world, it would be a sin to put the farm for sale, so you're going to try and make what you can out of it.
It's fair to say that entrepreneurial spirit, and it's very wrong with me not to sample when I hear Trevor.
It would be, David. I'd be curious to know how you find it.
That is certainly good stuff.
That's good. So it's made with fresh cow's milk. The one you have as well is a sorbet, so that's non-dairy, because there's a growing element of people in that. So Bethany has studied the different aspects of the market. She's quite a series of flavours, and her mum Barbara and a lady Donna that works 3 days a week with us, they're involved in all of the production and flavours. So now and again she'll say, Dad, would you sample that? Would you taste that? But really, she's the one more and more that is the driver behind it. So fair play to her.
Certainly good stuff.
The church is in good order, David, and you see that the memorial windows, different families give towards those.
You mentioned one here, Trevor, which relates to the First World War.
Yeah. And you see it's from the townland of Bardahaisha. Mm-hmm. Bardahaisha apparently means the highest of the 7 divisions. So this man signed up for the First World War, and then, as I understand it, he then took ill in the training camp and died without seeing service on the battlefield.
Yeah. And is he buried?
Yeah.
At the camp or here?
No, as I understand it, he's buried here.
Very interesting. Like most Presbyterian churches will have many memorials, and I just happen to notice these ones here, Trevor, relating to more the current, or maybe the Troubles period.
Yeah.
You're referring to this one down here at the back. Was that the man Graham?
Yeah.
You're referring to?
Yeah, that's Willie Graham. That's true.
Was that 1987? Was the year you were married?
That's 1987. We were married in May 87. So that was true.
And would many of the families still exist or still be around to worship here, Trevor?
Yeah. As I say, Grahams have moved away. Some of their far out relatives.
So Trevor, growing up in Pomeroy Church, what is your earliest memories of growing up here?
Well, the earliest memories is just coming with family, and then as I grew up and got married, then there wasn't enough room in the Boyd seat upstairs, so we eventually then, after a period of time, settled in the pew here where we're chatting today. But life revolved in many ways around the different pews. Where we had Sunday school It was spread throughout the church, and we were brought there from an early age. There was Miss Bell taught us as we arrived, and then Mrs. Gilkinson had a class down here, and it was really through her godly example, her teaching, that I came to saving faith in Jesus, and that's how my journey of faith really came about as she taught us.
But as we sit here today in this church, we see evidence of the past and the impact of a particular period of the past, and that Troubles period seems to have affected this congregation of Pomeroy greatly. Have you a memory of that period of time, Trevor, and the impact of that, not only maybe on you personally, but the impact of the Troubles here on this congregation?
Yeah, it probably meant that people felt isolated, and they just knuckled down trying to get on with their life and to survive, knowing that at that point in history there was a threat, whatever way you want to interpret that, and that was always a reminder as we would have come to church and seen the different memorial tablets to people who had lost their lives, and people that we knew, and people who actually were leaders and served in the church, like Stanley Adams would have been a Sunday school teacher, different people like that. So it would have made us mark. I think that mark will never disappear, but you have to work through that in your own mind and your own outlook in life, and learn from it. And I suppose, if anything, it made me want to be part of this area and make this more my home, that this was where I had chosen to be, in a sense.
So the important role then of church life and that sense of community spirit and that sense of community sport kicks in at times like that. And
Yeah.
And do you find that in your walk, in your personal faith and walk, that's a very important part of the role that you play in leadership?
Yeah, well, that's a valid point in some ways. From the perspective of the church and church leadership, there were families who were bereaved, and we went through a period of time when there were quite a few bereavements through the Troubles, and you know, our minister, Reverend Bingham, at that point, us as elders, what did we know? But we tried as best we could to minister in simple faith to those families that were bereaved. We couldn't change what had happened, but we tried to bring God's word and God's love, and to show support. So many of those families would still have a connection with the church today. A couple of families, to some degree, have naturally then died out, but there's still a lot of connection, and this church here would still have an annual service to remember those who lost their lives.
And no doubt, no matter where you minister, Trevor, be it whatever congregation you're attached to, would you still say this is home?
Yeah, I think I've just had my 60th birthday, and that causes reflection as well as looking forward. But yeah, Pomeroy is still home, and it's where we plan to retire to. That'll be home.
But home and home life, of course, wouldn't be home without a family. And of course, you're married and you have a young family of your own.
Yeah.
So tell us a wee bit about that journey. How did you meet Barbara?
Well, my dander through life would be totally different if I hadn't met Barbara. We had an annual orange service at Crossdernet Parish Church, close to Marie, and I was, after the service, I was parading past and I saw this lady, this fine young girl, beautiful, and I made inquiries then at a youth event that we were having. I says, who's that girl that you go to school with? I says, I never saw her before. I says, oh, that's Barbara McVeigh. And then this girl, Fiona, lives in Pomeroy. She brought her to a coffee bar in a couple of weeks' time, and then from that coffee bar I invited her out. So, as they say, the rest is history. So again, that was something that took place very local to us. God brought her to me. I didn't have to go. She came across, or she came with her father to that every year, but it was the particular year I noticed her. So we went out for 4 years, and I gave her the best engagement present possible. We got engaged, and better than that, I married her on her birthday. She has a different interpretation, but I thought I was doing a really good job. So she has been a real support and mainstay. We've had some good conversations, but she's been very supportive.
And you've obviously a family of your own.
Yeah, family. There's Brian's the eldest, Andrew is second, and then Bethany is the youngest. So Brian and Andrew are now both married, and it gives me some degree of joy to say that they've both decided to settle around Pomeroy as well. Both have settled in with their wives, and then Bethany is still at home with us, or at the manse in Tubbermore with us. Yeah.
But you mentioned Marie and Marie Orange Hall or Marie Community Group.
Yeah.
What's your involvement there? Because I know you are involved in the Loyal Orders, and you find that as an important part of your journey as well.
Yeah. Well, my father would have originally belonged to one of the Pomeroy lodges, but then whenever he moved to the farm at Bardahesha, they got him then to join Marie, which was a much smaller lodge, and then that was my connection, following in your father's footsteps type thing. So then I became a member of Marie. It was small, and there was plenty of opportunity. So in the late 1990s, I took the opportunity to have a discussion about setting up a community group. Now, in the 90s, in the Ulster Scots community groups were frowned upon more than embraced, but we ploughed on and got Marie Community Association established. And I look back on that with some degree of encouragement and indeed godly pride, in that the group is still going today. I was the chairman for 10 years, but there's leadership in place. One of the early projects just to embrace the community was that there's a large bog. There's a 100-acre bog at Crossdernot, just beside where I met Barbara. So we took in, there was a fly tipping problem. So one of our first projects was to get all the rubbish cleared up and to get a fence up, and then that reduced, that tidied up the area for the whole community. So it done away with the rubbish, and it started to bring a bit more pride and interest. And as I say, whenever people start to put their shoulder to the wheel, get involved, you take an interest, you value it more. And in actual fact, one of those first projects was recognised by the government. So I got a trip to 10 Downing Street and a piece of a sausage roll with Mr. Tony Blair. And we got the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. And again, we got a trip across to St James's Palace to meet the late Queen for that award.
So Trevor, it's great to be here on the farm with you. What do you think the future may hold for Trevor Boyd?
Who is to know what tomorrow holds, but looking, God willing, I'd like to continue on with ministry in Draperstown and Tubbermore until the expected retirement age, and then our plan is to retire, Barbara and I, to retire here to Pomeroy and the family farm, and then all being well, we'll be able to enjoy time with the family and maybe grandchildren as well in the future.
Yeah. Well, Trevor, it's been a really great experience, and thank you for taking the time to having a chat with us and taking us through a wonderful journey through your life. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Pleasure.